Hello, everyone. We've got a history lesson today, and you're going to have to follow along very carefully because this is one of the most confusing topics I have ever handled on this channel. We're going to be talking about Prowl 2 today, which, so I know we have our preferences. I know everyone has their own thing when it comes to Transformers, both in design, color, and of course, naming conventions. Can we all agree that Prowl 2 is like the dumbest name they've ever come up with? I mean, RID didn't really have to hold itself to anything. It's not like we didn't already have other cop cars in G1 they could have named this after. He could have been Nightbeat. He could have been Streetwise. They could have come up with something completely new. No. It's Prowl 2. We stamped a number on it so you didn't confuse it with the other Prowls in this toy line. So the fun part about this is through whatever weird naming convention caused this has created one of the weirdest continuity issues in all of Transformers, simply because of one number. So, first off, let's try to figure this out. Let's try to get the explanation of this across. So, we have to go to the repainted Autobot Brothers for this. The original listing that they had in computers was for the same names, but all designated 2. Prowl 2, X-Brawn 2, Sideburn 2. The trick here is that supposedly this was going to kind of boil down into their Spy Changers as well, because of course all three of them had Spy Changer toys along with their repainted deluxes. But obviously, the deluxe names did not have that digit, and they did not have they didn't have them in the Spy Changers except for Prowl, which makes it really weird. Why did Prowl need the number 2 even though the other Spy Changer brothers did not? Was he just so different from the standard Prowl when you changed him that they decided, nope, that's too far. That's too far. We need to dial this back. We need to separate the two out. No one really knows. It's the weirdest naming thing they've ever done. And that would be the end of it. Except they retroactively used that name again in Beast Wars to differentiate the two Prowls that came out in that series. And that got even more confusing because both of them, well, I should save that. I should save that because this gets worse. There's another Prowl too on top of all of that. Yeah. See, I would like to say that all of this is just name dumping and just reusing the same stupid naming convention. But this gets really messy. So, there's a lot of problems with this. The problem with RID Prowl 2 is with Japan, car robots in G1 are the exact same continuity. The characters we see in RID 2001 are actually from the far future come back to handle this Predacon, Decepticon presence in the modern times. Now, that's car robots fiction. Obviously, over here in RID 2001, it's just another fiction. It's just a completely different universe. But over in Japan, it's one and the same. And you wouldn't think that a US-only toy would actually affect that, except Binaltech, especially in Japan, has writers that likes to pull things from different continuities, and they don't mind crossing over from fiction that comes from in America to enhance fiction in Japan. So it got a little bit messy. Yeah. That's not even the only of it. With Beast Wars, the problem is that both Prowl and Prowl 2 both had claim over being the original Prowl from G1. This one in the Beast Wars source books claims to be the original Prowl, and a lot of comic books that have depicted Magnaboss since then kind of followed that convention, whereas the bio for Transmetal 2 Prowl did include a lot of details that harkened back to the original. They used the same weapon. They had the same function. They had the same motto. He believed that he was this great like military strategist in the past. So yeah, you can see where this starts getting really, really bad. God, where do I start here? This took me so long to figure out how to put all this in one line. It was actually kind of like easier to understand. So for all of this, we have to go back to the very first Prowl 2 we ever got, and that was in Headmasters. See, this is so bad that we're going all the way back to the original G1 cartoons in order to explain something that happened in 2001. So, Prowl was present in Headmaster, complete with a speaking line and everything, even though in the original 86 movie we saw him die. This is because in Japan, the movie came out later than it did. It came out in 1989, so that fiction didn't really exist for a long time in Japan. And they didn't know. They did not know, so they just threw Prowl into Headmasters. What makes this weird is that in Dark Awakening, when they visit the crypts of the Autobots, the tombs, they list Prowl as one of the dead, even in the Japanese version, which makes this even more confusing. So, how do we explain this? So, this is where we have to go to Binaltech to get our fiction. They had something called a Genetronic Translink system. It's something that allowed a single spark to operate multiple bodies at once, which is their reason for another Prowl being around after Season 3. But this gets muddied because the Binaltech story eventually hits a breaking point where it becomes a parallel universe, meaning that this Prowl no longer had any feasible explanation, and now it's going to get even more confusing. Keep in mind, this is all entirely relevant. This is all entirely relevant. Just stick around. We're going to get through all of this together. So, what splintered Binaltech into the BT World alternate universe from the original continuity? That would be this guy. So, in Binaltech, that Ravage that we had over here is just some extremely weird take on Ravage, was actually based on Beast Wars Ravage. It was his original Beast Wars body that was recovered and rebuilt into what you see here. This took place between season 2 and season 3 in Japan. To bring this body back to life, they actually trapped and captured Ravage, and in cassette mode, stuck him into the cassette player on this car in order to fuel a spark for this Ravage and bring him back to life. Hey, kind of a weird way to do it, but alright, let's do it that way. But because he has knowledge of the future, now he can affect the past, which is going to create our splintered timeline. Specifically, his machinations gave Wheeljack a premonition of the future and the eventual deaths of many Autobots in the Battle of Autobot City. So, this leads to a Wheeljack who is now trying to prevent that future from happening, thus, alternate timeline. This is going to get worse. This is going to get worse. So, I have to explain all of this so you know exactly what's happening and why all these different Prowls exist. And this is where we get to this guy. Layers upon layers. This is an onion, man. So, we have to introduce Chip Chase into this because he's one of the ones that helped Wheeljack start rescuing these Autobot sparks from their fates in the original Generation 1 world. Remember, this is Binaltech. They are kind of dimension hoppers, so being able to save Autobots in the original continuity is not so far-fetched for their storylines. So, they did this for a few Autobots, but one of the ones they tried to save was Prowl. You know? So, when they attempted this, when they attempted to pull Prowl's spark and save it in a Binaltech body, it gets lost in subspace. And then something weird happens. So, Chip Chase decides that he's going to sacrifice himself to bring the Binaltech Prowl online. Why he needs to do this, why like this Prowl absolutely has to come online, I don't really know. The Binaltech fiction is not the clearest thing to discern. But for whatever reason, and this is actually the clever part of this, it makes sense that Chip Chase is involved because he's a genius at these kind of things. He helped Wheeljack and Ratchet do a ton of stuff in G1. However, it's playing off of his specific history with Prowl from the episode Roll For It, where he took control of Prowl's body when his battle computer went down via the internet. So the two already share this weird bond, and that's why it's brought up and why Chip wants to save this new incarnation of Prowl. So rather than let the new body go offline, they put his body into cold storage, I guess, and his mind and his spirit ends up becoming the spark to give life to this new Prowl, which gives us the Binaltech version of Prowl, which apparently is indiscernible from the original because with Chip being in Prowl's brain for a while, it copied over a lot of that. Not that he actually was in the brain. We're stretching things a little bit for this, but that is how Binaltech Prowl did come to life. And that's at first. Eventually, that spark is found, and Chip did return to his original body, so this Prowl could have the original G1 spark in it, and that is what saves Prowl from his fate. At least, temporarily. So, at some point, this Prowl and the Binaltech Wheeljack head off into the original universe in order to, I'm not sure, like, this gets a little bit muddy. One said it was a trip for medical supplies, another said it was to watch a trial. For whatever reason, they traveled into the G1 universe, but thanks to the machinations of the Quintessons, who put a quadrant lock on their version of Earth, they're unable to return. So they do what happens a lot in Binaltech. They switch to new bodies. In the original universe, they switch to brand new, freshly made bodies that look like their originals, and basically live out in the original G1 continuity. This is how Prowl now exists in Headmasters, as well as why Wheeljack is still alive when we get to Victory and the rebuild of Jinrai into Victory Leo. The Binaltech bodies, in the meantime, get stored away. Now, Wheeljack, being kind of concerned about the fate of their original selves, decided to bring along Prowl's spare beta body, which is the blue repainted Binaltech toy. So there's actually 2 spare Prowl bodies that are now in storage in the original G1 continuity, while the rescued form of Prowl's Spark now exists in a copy of his body. And this is where I start going a little bit cross-eyed. Point is, this is how G1 Prowl managed to survive into the Headmaster continuity, and how he lived long enough to become Beast Wars Prowl that was part of Magnaboss. So that is how that is all explained. But that still leaves us with 2 Prowls to explain. So we need to go through that now. Alright, so let's talk about that blue body, shall we? So this BT body is programmed with all the memories and training of the original Prowl. So he's this military strategist, he's a great soldier, etc., but he lacks a spark. This body was eventually found by the Convoy Council of Car Robots. Now, because it had those memories, it was considered very important to going to their mission, to the Fire Convoy's mission of going back into the past in order to stop Gigatron there, because it's knowledge of that time frame that Prowl lived in. So there's a logical reason for why they're doing this. So they rebuild the body into a spy changer. I don't know why they decide to do that, but they do. And they let Vector Sigma power it up and give it its own spark. Thus we have Prowl 2. He trains the spy changers, he advises everybody in how Earth operates so they can be prepared once they reach the planet, and decides to stay in the future and wait for them to return with what he knows will be a successful mission. So that is how we get RID Prowl 2. That's his place in the storyline and how he exists in the Car Robots fiction as well. And yeah, then there is the matter of the original Binaltech body. So that's another quandary that we need to explain, and that is going to take us all the way back to Beast Wars Transmetal 2 Prowl. An older Chip Chase eventually falls ill I assume this is the primary universe, by the way. So when an older Chip Chase falls ill, Wheeljack, who remember is the Binaltech Wheeljack and now in a G1 body, decides to save Chip Chase's life the same way they did in the Binaltech world, by transferring his life into the body of the Binaltech Prowl. However, this time it doesn't go as well. Blame it on different technology being available, blame it on Chip already being sick and dying, but for whatever reason, it didn't entirely take. So with his damaged memory, with his memories too damaged and being able to come to consciousness. So the body was put back into storage until it was eventually found centuries later by Maximals, who then rebuilt that body into Maximal technology. That makes a little bit more sense than randomly switching a big beefy bot into a spy changer. And they did manage to bring it back online. Thus we have Prowl 2 in Beast Wars, who believes himself to be the original Prowl because that is not only the backup body of the G1 Prowl, but also it's the memories of Chip Chase being Prowl two, or well, not two different times because this is the one time. I wrote all this down. I did all the plotting to make this in as much of a plain line as I could, and even I am still getting this stuff backwards. This is how bad this is. But yeah, that is how we get to everything. So, RID Prowl 2 is actually the Binaltech backup body, the Beta BT of Prowl, given life by Vector Sigma and redesigned into a spy changer. The Beast Wars Prowl is the original Prowl saved through dimension hopping time travel shenanigans, and brought back in the modern day during Headmasters. And then Transmetal 2 Prowl and Beast Wars is Chip Chase, who, because of his damaged memories, thinks he's actually Prowl. Whew. All of this insanity over one number. This is the most convoluted thing I've ever witnessed in Transformers, and it's just to explain the existence of one digit. To think none of this would have been necessary if Hasbro just called the spy changer Prowl, but no, they had to create the dumbest name of all time to create the craziest backstory of all time. But you know what? I'm okay with that. If having a stupid name led to something so ridiculous and just enjoyable to read through, all right, fine. I will give Takara and their writers, and especially the Binaltech writers, a massive amount of credit, because this is an incredibly complex web to weave just to get all these Prowls explained, and somehow they did it. It's convoluted, it's nonsensical, but if you know the fictions, there is a logic to it, and it does kind of work. So that is Prowl 2 in all of his facets. Thank you very much. I hope you could follow along, because this is not the most convenient character to talk about, but it's one of the more fascinating. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.